The Ship of Theseus is a classical thought experiment in metaphysics that raises the problem of identity over time. The first known reference appears in Plutarch's Life of Theseus, written around the 1st century CE. Plutarch presents the case as a historical anecdote followed by a philosophical reflection. The essential question is whether something that undergoes gradual change remains fundamentally the same thing. In Plutarch's case, the object in question is a ship that over time has each of its wooden components replaced. Once all original components are gone, is it still the ship of Theseus? This leads to two classical positions. First, the ship retains its identity because the changes were gradual and maintained continuity. And second, the ship loses its identity the moment a part is replaced, or certainly by the time all original parts are gone. The core issue is persistence through change. That is, what allows an object to remain the same despite being altered. To complicate the matter, later versions of the thought experiment, especially those discussed by Thomas Hobbes, introduce an additional twist. Suppose that someone collects all the original discarded parts and reconstructs the ship elsewhere. Now there are two ships, one made of entirely new material in the same shape and function as the original, and one made of the original material but reassembled. Which of the two, if either, is the real ship of Theseus? This extended version pushes the problem from gradual replacement to duplication and continuity. Does physical material or structural continuity matter more? To address the Ship of Theseus problem, philosophers have proposed various theories of identity, each emphasizing different aspects of what makes something the same. Firstly, there is the position of mereological essentialism, which argues that the identity of an object depends entirely on its specific parts. If any part is replaced, the object is no longer the same. On this view, the Ship of Theseus ceases to be the same ship after the very first plank is changed. This approach follows from a rigid reading of substance identity. An object is defined by its material constituents. The second position is mereological gradualism, which accepts that objects can persist through gradual replacement. The idea is that identity is preserved not by strict material sameness, but by structural or functional continuity over time. If the change is continuous and orderly, we may still regard it as the same ship. This kind of thinking leads into Locke's approach to identity, as discussed in an essay concerning human understanding, particularly in Book 2, which focuses on identity and diversity. Locke applies the reasoning not only to physical objects but also to living organisms and persons. He draws a distinction between the identity of man and the identity of person, where continuity of memory or consciousness may preserve identity even when the body changes. Then the third position is named Fourdimensionalism, which comes from the metaphysics of time. According to this view, objects persist through time the way they extend in space. An object is made up of temporal parts like slices of itself across time. So, the Ship of Theseus is not a single unchanging object, but a collection of time stages. Each version, original, partially replaced, completely replaced, is a part of its whole identity across time. No contradiction arises because all these versions are considered equally real. This way of thinking has its roots in later metaphysics, but an early version appears in Thomas Hobbes' discussion of the Ship of Theseus. And Hobbes introduces what later philosophers call the reassembly problem. If the original materials are still together, reassembled in the same shape, there is now a rival to the gradually modified ship. The question becomes, is identity in the material, in the function, or in the continuity? These examples show that identity can be understood in multiple, sometimes conflicting ways. In material continuity, which is essentialism, then in functional or structural continuity, which is gradualism, and finally in temporal extension, which is perdurantism. Each theory offers a different framework for thinking about what it means for something to persist as the same over time. Though the Ship of Theseus is primarily a metaphysical problem, it occasionally arises in practical domains. In discussions of personal identity, for instance, the analogy is applied to the human body or self. Our cells regenerate over time, memories fade, and behaviors shift, yet we refer to ourselves as the same person. Which component, biological matter, memory, or consciousness, anchors our identity? This concern is addressed by Locke again in an essay concerning human understanding when he says, "For since consciousness always accompanies thinking, and it is that which makes everyone to be what he calls self, and thereby distinguishes himself from all other thinking things, in this alone consists personal identity." Here, Locke prioritizes memory and consciousness over physical continuity, which has influenced both philosophy and modern legal reasoning in issues like legal responsibility or moral agency over time.